The Denver Nuggets, it's time to have a philosophical conversation about what exactly the Nuggets are doing. How do we feel that Calvin Booth and the rest of the front office has built this roster? I actually want to pick Ryan's brain. Do the Nuggets have enough athletes to fortify their already compromised defensive core? And what can the Denver Nuggets do going forward to show they've learned a lesson about some of the pitfalls of this NBA season? It's time to talk Denver Nuggets basketball. Ryan, Swipa, it's Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome to Locked On Nugget. This is your host, Swiper. This is your team every day. I'm here with one of my besties, Ryan Blackburn, a.k.a. Ryan Charburn, a.k.a. Michael Malone's right-hand man. I am so glad to be here with you all today. We took yesterday off. A lot of family events going on all over the place, so they left me by my lonesome. But, y'all, we got to have some conversation today because this team, no Jokic, no Murray, Ryan. It actually presented some very interesting conversations for me personally. But y'all, before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Ryan Blackburn, how are you doing today, my brother?
I'm doing all right. I'm like, we've got March Madness going on. It's been fun. I'm currently leading my family bracket. We've got a locked on bracket that I'm not very high on. I've picked Duke in my family bracket and Florida in the locked on bracket. Who do you think's going to win?
Oh, I'm not gonna lie to you. I have no idea. I have no idea. I've given up trying to predict college basketball.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have McNeese State winning?
I did. Well, and you want to know why? Because I went to University of South Carolina. So like, screw Clemson, man.
Oh,
ain't no way, dog.
Okay, so that was a little bit of hate in your blood.
I was the only one in my family bracket that had it, and it was because I have hate in my heart. It's crazy.
Okay. Hate wins, Ryan Blackburn.
Hate wins.
How did you feel about the head coach signing a deal for NC State already?
That was whack. Like that's one where it's, and I know you guys were talking about NIL over at PC. The world is a wild west at times with college sports, college hoops, college football, and coaches kind of doing their own thing. It's really tough because there's no loyalty at all anymore, and there shouldn't be, because the moment that you kind of demonstrate loyalty to your situation is the moment where somebody else is going to burn you in this landscape, unfortunately. And it sucks because like it's not the college that I grew up on. It's not the situation that everybody wants to be in. But
yeah, also
like players deserve to be paid and coaches deserve to be paid. And these guys, like, if you can get a situation that takes care of yourself and your family, then who is anybody to judge? So it sucks. It's really tough.
Yeah. Look, so let's get straight into it, y'all. Ryan, you probably saw my timeline during the Lakers game. No Jokic, no Murray.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so sometimes beyond basketball, I get philosophical and I start thinking about, you know what, let me get a broad scope view of what exactly is happening. Because sometimes you get so lost in the weeds. You're like, man, they're losing and they're winning. I'm just like, but what goes into the process beyond that day's shoot around into what makes you a winner or loser? And you know what I started thinking about, Ryan Blackburn?
Yes, sir.
The OKC Thunder are not the biggest team in the NBA. They're not even like the strongest team in the league. But one of their reason their defense is so terrifying is they have a bunch of very long players, very long wings, and they play extremely aggressive at all times. They swarm you with pressure. And then I started thinking about, okay, the Clippers. They've had a really good defense all year. Zubac has been one of the best defensive anchors in the NBA this year. But they signed Chris Dunn, who, if not for the 65-game rules and the minute restriction, he'd be a first-team All-NBA defender, I would argue, this year. And then you got Kawhi Leonard. Then you get Derek Jones Jr., who just 2 years ago was a veteran minimum signing. And then you get the Boston Celtics, Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Luke Cornett, Sam Hauser. They're all committed to a scheme. Then you have around the league really good defenses, the Magic, without Suggs even, but with Suggs, Franz, Paolo. They got Wendell Carter Jr. They have a bunch of athletes. They got Jonathan Isaac, KCP. And then you get the Denver Nuggets. Among all of the playoff teams in the Western Conference, I would argue the Denver Nuggets have the worst defensive personnel of anybody in the group. Yeah. But then you ask yourself why. And if you look at the modern NBA, y'all, that has gone away from traditional rim protecting of having just a stationary drop big to how do you have as many players as possible on the court to keep you from getting to the basket as a driver and then containing on set drives, right? So when I looked at this, in the last basically 3 years, the Denver Nuggets have drafted Christian Brown, drafted Peyton Watson, drafted Julian Strawther, drafted Jalen Pickett, drafted Hunter Tyson, signed people like Spencer Jones, Vlaco Chanchar still on the roster, PJ Hall's on the roster, and then you get Zeke Naji, who's a holdover from the 2020 draft. Ryan, do you feel, relative to the rest of the league, that the Denver Nuggets have done a good enough job cultivating the kind of athletes that you need to succeed in this era defensively?
No, like straight up, no. That's one place where people talk about the shooting, people talk about, and that's taken a major precedence in things. And there's a lot of different ways to talk about athleticism. There's a lot of different ways for athleticism to manifest. So much of it is about the processing speed and is about the ability to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. A lot of that is reaction time. Denver doesn't have the guys that react fast enough to take advantage of the athleticism that they do have. I think that Christian's been slow on the get up. He's probably their most athletic player. Maybe I don't know. Like who would you consider their best athlete?
It's probably Peyton, just because of like the combination of length, jumping, and transition speed. But in terms of like pure leaping ability, it's probably Christian and healthy Aaron, obviously.
Yeah, I think those three all have a case for it. Russell Westbrook has a case for it, of course. But he's somebody that has to withhold some of that because he's 36. He's in year 17. Like, of course. Right. So nobody's expecting him to be that kind of guy. But you really see the lack of it when you don't have guys that connect things together and make those decisions easier for those guys. Mm-hmm. A lot of it feels like everybody doesn't really know what to do. Everybody doesn't. And that's what happens when you become tentative, when you don't know what to do and you don't get to play full speed. A lot of times you'll see these defenses, these elite defenses, play at full speed, and you take advantage of that athleticism. The Houston Rockets are a great example of this. They know what they're doing on that end of the floor, and it allows guys like Amen Thompson to really show off how athletic he is.
Yeah.
I think that Denver doesn't really understand how to do their defensive scheme anymore. Mm-hmm. And that is making it very difficult for them to figure out like how hard they can go, what they can do. Are they going to be just chasing things around? Are they going to have somebody that's going to get their own back?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the other things is that Jokic, for like all the burden that he does carry on the offensive end, the defensive end, his responsibility has to be to step over and help out for when other guys get beat, like a normal center would. I'm not sure all of those guys believe that he's going to be like chasing down their assignment if they screw up or if they overrun an assignment or whatever. And that definitely hurts it. So with Jokic, with Murray, with Porter, with Aaron Gordon kind of compromised physically from the injuries that he has sustained, other guys that Denver has within their rotation, like whenever they play Vlaco Chanchar or Hunter Tyson or Dario Saric or even DeAndre Jordan, like and Julian Strawther, I think counts in this as well. Denver they go from a team that could be more athletic to a team that is clearly not athletic enough to make up for the deficiencies that they have.
I'm going to read you something interesting, Ryan Blackburn. You know I like information. I like context.
Yeah, you do.
I don't like just speaking straight from the top of the head, no insight. So PvP stats. Did you know that last year when Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Aaron Gordon were on the court, the Nuggets had a 112.28 defensive rating, and they had a plus 11.10 net rating.
Now, 112.8 isn't like crazy. It's not a crazy number, especially for last year. I would call that average for the most part.
Right. But relative to where they are, very good. Right. And again, they had a top 8 defensive rating in the league last year. So they worked out really well in the long term. So that was a 112 point whatever. Do you know that this year, with Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon on the court together, they have a 114.48 defense rating this season?
Yeah, defensive ratings, they've kind of trended up a little bit across the league. And so it's not that different. But again, like if I'm calling that last year kind of average, this year is maybe average to subpar.
So I was there for a little bit. And I think the thing is that I can understand like a slight change in some stuff. I think that where we are now, I think the Nuggets defense has gotten like obviously like pretty substantially worse this year. And just to give some context behind this year, Ryan, the defensive rating around the league average this year is a 114.3.
Right. So just slightly below average for those guys, I think.
Yeah, I mean, a 117 is.
Oh, you said 117? I thought you said 114.8.
Oh, no, sorry, 114. Yeah, 114. It was 117 with no AG on the court.
Okay, yeah, that's bad.
Right. So I think some of this is the team, and we'll talk about this more on the other side because we got to do ad break, but I think the team has functionally gotten worse, but I also think around Murray and Jokic in particular, I think like the drop-off from last year to this year has been pretty stark. But on the other side, we're going to continue this conversation, and we're going to talk about has Malone and the coaching staff, have they also contributed to this in some way? We'll talk about all that and more here at Locked On Nuggets. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by a 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rates subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2020. Robinhood Financial LLC. Member ISPC. Gold memberships is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. And y'all, everybody knows I love me some game time. I love me some game time, y'all. There's nothing like watching basketball live, the energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers on the hardwood, or maybe even a celebrity siding courtside. Is that Ryan Blackburn? If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time new feature, Game Time Picks, fills out all the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. Now, easy ticket shopping. I just checked the Game Time app, and there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. I went to a game the other night to watch a friend perform at the halftime show, and I got a chance to see LaMelo Ball versus Trae Young, and I got really good seats for a really good price from Game Time. Super deals. Game Time Picks even highlight super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time.
We'll be right back. Locked On Nuggets. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Swipa, with his brother, Ryan Blackburn. Y'all, make sure if you're watching this on YouTube, we're on the way to 10,000 subscribers. Go ahead, hit that like, share, and subscribe. Also, sign up for the free daily newsletter from Ryan Blackburn and Matt Moore every single day of the week. Also, if you're listening to this on the audio side, make sure you give us a 5-star review. That way more and more people can listen to the great content being made here at Locked On Nuggets. But, Ryan, here's my thing. We actually argue about this in the group chat all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very much a process person. I think that you and Matt can get lost on results far too often, even on a play-by-play basis. We argue about this all the time, okay? There's philosophical differences, okay? One of us was right about Darius Arch, by the way, who we'll talk about in a second.
Okay. I've been right about a lot of shit.
Some of this is Jokic is having one of his worst defensive seasons, but it's actually gotten worse as the season's gone on. I think a lot of that's fatigue.
Yeah.
I think some of that is, okay, the team just simply hasn't cared.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, for me, it's so dumb, right? If I'm a Nuggets decision maker and I'm like, okay, Jokic struggles in space. He struggles at the rim. He needs guards to contain the ball. So what are we going to do? Not have a rim protector, not somebody that no one that can guard the ball, no one that can get around screens. And Jokic, just be better. And I'm just saying that seems like a illogical fallacy. That's like saying Giannis can't shoot, so let's put no floor spacers around him whatsoever and just hope for the best. I just think that the Nuggets were so backwards in how they went about this offseason by going super young, which you and me were just like 5-6 rookie contracts on this team.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We're not the Thunder, but they did it anyway. You can't even the Cleveland Cavaliers aren't even doing that, which again, it's just like you need veterans between the ages of 24 and 29 on your roster to fill that out.
And we knew that. Like of course we knew that going in. That so the funny thing is we're talking about the athleticism.
Yeah.
Where do players peak athletically? Swipa, it's kind of in that 24 to 29 range. You're in that range that you're talking about where you can't just go all veteran. You have to have guys that kind of balance out that stuff. And I think for Denver specifically, I understood what Calvin Booth was trying to do when getting Peyton Watson and Christian Brown in there, especially when he had KCP and Bruce Brown as well. The problem is that when you also kind of double down on the shooting disparities and the issues that you have, and you go with Julian Strother, Jalen Pickett, and Hunter Tyson, guys who are not going to help you athletically, I thought that was a misstep very clearly, just in terms of the process of what got you to where you were successful and not being able to maintain that. And so, there were questions and there were some factors that Calvin had to go with, but the other factor was that rather than I think Denver kind of assumed that the reason why they faltered last year was due to fatigue and not due to any underlying issues that they had. And I wasn't super convinced about that. And like you saw the athleticism issues in particular rear their head against Minnesota, where Minnesota, a super athletic team going up against you, a super physical team, a strong team, kind of put you in a blood bag. Like they were doing some bad, and like that's continued this year. It's actually gotten worse. So I think that you're going to need to find, if you're Denver, a balance between those two plans. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do it with this core going forward, but that's a conversation for another day, I think.
Yeah, I just think that the Nuggets have access to the same numbers we have. Famously, I remember Calvin Booth referencing the on-court net rating last summer when Christian Brown was on the court with the starters. And we're all just like, I mean, we know, but that's like a pretty limited sample size, Calvin.
By the way, it's actually borne out in a pretty big way. Jokic and Christian Brown has been just fine on the court.
Yeah, you know why? Because the offense is better this year with Christian Brown.
Yeah.
But the defense is like worse in a lot of really tangible ways. Go ahead.
No, I think what another kind of misstep that the Nuggets had was that they just assumed that Christian Brown would be the same level that he was defensively in a larger role, when he actually was going to have to focus way more on being better on the offensive end in order to make this thing work against higher level talent. And he has gotten better on the offensive end, but it's just come at a cost because he's exhausted. He was playing like 17 to 20 minutes last year, and now he's playing 33 on a consistent basis, and he's missed just 2 games the entire season. So you're seeing him get a little bit worse and make some bad decisions because the dude is gassed. First time being a starter.
Yeah, I get it. I think for me, it's just, you've brought that to me before, but I've also told you several times now that but your primary job is to protect Murray and Jokic. That's just the way the NBA works. And you know how I know that to be true? Because we have a podcast from almost every player in the league, it feels like, not named Jokic and Giannis. You know who says that their job is to cover for their best player, and they know that their job is to cover for the best player? Very good player.
It's Paul George, right?
No, it's Josh Hart. Paul George too. But Josh Hart has come out and said multiple times that his job is to make sure Jalen Brunson doesn't have to worry about doing certain things on the court. And he knows that, and he's committed to it. And he has to work even harder because him and OG have to cover for Cat and Brunson, who are horrible defenders and have been this year. But I think that's what I'm saying is like, your main function is to take care of the things that brings you home. And Jokic and Murray is what brings you home. And on top of Cal, he's young. Like Christian will get there at some point. But I just think it's just been such a philosophical misstep in that you made so many bad assumptions. Like I think ill-advised assumptions, not backed on data. Like I could have shown you the data surrounding having athletes that are bigger next to Jokic and Murray has paid out. And then one of the things that I always bring up that people just seem to earnestly forget, Ryan, the Denver Nuggets had the third best defense in the playoffs in 2023. Third. One of the reasons is they had KCP, they had Jeff Green, a fully healthy Aaron Gordon, probably the best defensive run of Michael Porter Jr.'s career, and Bruce Brown coming off the bench. So when you had 5 players that were saying yes to defense, and then on top of that, Jokic was fully engaged.
Yeah.
Murray was fully engaged.
They believed that they could do it.
Everybody was on the same plane. And now one of the things that the Heat struggled with, the Heat scored over 100 points versus Denver one time. One. After blitzing everybody else in the Eastern Conference. And my whole thing is like, well, they gave you the formula. Give us a bunch of athletes that are just sprinting and running and closing out, playing aggressive defense. And then now we're here where we are right now. Go ahead.
I want to pull on that real quick. I had this thought while I was out and while we were preparing for this show.
Yeah.
You mentioned KCP and kind of the philosophical difference. And I think one thing that we have learned from this Christian Brown to KCP kind of transfer was that Christian Brown is a better offensive player. There's no doubt about that. Like he is a better player. He's going to be a better player for a long time. But you talked about just guys that are willing and able to just take on a lesser role on the offensive end in order to focus everything defensively and make sure that other guys don't have to do that. That is something that KCP did. And it was one of the reasons was because he had a lower usage, was because he didn't have to worry about that. If the shot was open, he was going to take it, but it wasn't something that he had to think about that often. And so I think that Denver, if we're learning lessons from this season, they need somebody to become the heartbeat and the identity of the defense next year. And I don't think it's going to be Jokic. I don't think it's going to be Christian Brown. Maybe it is. Maybe this was just a Christian kind of growing and learning his role a little bit on the offensive end. And maybe he'll scale it back next year. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But I do think that Denver, whoever it is, they have to have somebody that draws on that identity defensively again and says, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it upon myself and make sure to hold other people accountable like KCP did, because somebody has to do it. And nobody is doing it this year. And that is where they are most lacking.
On the other side, we'll wrap up this part of the conversation and talk a little bit about tonight's game versus the Blazers here at Locked On Nuggets. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Look, finding the right talent is very difficult for running a business. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Fast and easy hiring. Posting a job is free and simple, y'all. And within a day, multiple qualified candidates will be available to choose from. Cost-effective growth. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork finds affordable top-tier freelancers to scale my business efficiently. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. We'll be right back for more here on Locked On Nuggets. We are back here for the final segment of Locked On Nuggets. This is Swipa with Ryan Blackburn. We're talking about the Denver Nuggets, Calvin Booth's vision, the athletes on the team, the things that have been missing defensively from this year. Ryan.
These are
Jalen Pickett, Hunter Tyson, Julian Strawther were the last 3 draft picks for Denver.
And I think to just kind of hammer that home, Deron Holmes was.
Yes.
And I understand from Calvin
100%.
Booth's perspective, he was like, I found a guy that can really help us on that athleticism front, that physicality front, and it just did not work out. It sucks because he got hurt July 15th after everybody was gone on free agency.
Right. So the last 3 draft picks to play for Denver are Jalen Pickett, Hunter Tyson, Julian Strawther.
Yes.
I think Deron Holmes falls in line of the Christian Brown, Peyton Watson kind of mindset of really good athletes that we can put around the floor, should be able to pick up the tone defensively.
Yes.
I don't think they ever should have got away from that. And I am confused, Ryan, of what made them take that step away, given that they know, as I've said this to y'all privately too, as Jokic gets older, he's going to be more Dirk than he is anything else. And Dirk, if you remember, in his 30s, wasn't really a right home to your mother defender.
Yeah, I wouldn't describe him as a lockdown defender in the realm of Marc Gasol later in his career.
But what he did do is that he did his job well, but he was anchored by Tyson Chandler, and then he had Sean Marion on the roster, and Jason Kidd was still playing really good defense on the roster. Jason Terry defended defensively. I mean, there was a Josh Howard era too. Deshaun Stevenson was on that team. They basically played players that knew what they were supposed to do, and they locked in and committed to a scheme. And then that way, Dirk went to the playoffs, and he was just giving people bucket after bucket after bucket, nonstop, on great efficiency. And I think Denver has to adopt a similar model. I just think you have to be able to give, and I've said this, y'all, in the chat, this next iteration of Denver has to have an all-NBA, DPOY level player next to Jokic, I think, for it to be a championship repeat kind of team. Because I think at this point, you need somebody who's mobile enough to be able to cover weak side and rotations, to be able to defend at the rim in a traditional sense, but also to be able to play in space a little bit. And I think there are teams that have 1 or 2 of those. But the thing is, the Nuggets, I think, Ryan, you can slant this team defensively, and then you can still have the best offense in the league when Joker's on the court.
Yeah,
I think there's a world for you to live in that space. And I think that's kind of what the Nuggets need to prioritize on, is how do we actually just fortify our defense? And really, Jokic and Murray and whoever that third player is, they take care of the rest of it. But another thing is too, Ryan, I also think that with the MPJ question, is MPJ good enough at this point to be the tertiary option you need to create his own shot, create options for other people, to be able to finish baskets at a high level, but also just to be able to take pressure off of those two when the defense is collapsing on to those two. And what I'm saying is, right now, the Nuggets defense is so bad that they're eating already at will, including on Porter, like you saw in the Laker game. But on top of that, when they are slanting their defense to take Murray and Jokic out of the game, they don't really have a third option that can consistently take advantage of those advantages that's already naturally being created on the court.
Yeah, they need somebody who can both create off the dribble and create offense for themselves and others when those things are happening. Just being able to read the floor. That's never something that Mike's been able to do. It's an unfortunate reality for where he is at in his career. Other teams might be able to use him a little bit better. I don't think that his fit in Denver is that good anymore. And just with the way that the Nuggets are constructed, with where the team is at from a compromised defensive perspective, if he was on a better defense that could kind of account for his strengths and weaknesses, then maybe Mike would be able to fit in that situation. But Denver's just not really that team anymore. So I think that, it's tough, because I think you're right that unless the Nuggets have a guy that is playing 35 minutes a night of elite defense on the back line or on the perimeter for Denver, then I just don't know how they're going to make their current core work. And that's why I had the questions that I had entering the season.
But you know what's funny is KCP for us, he got all NBA votes for us. For
crazy.
Defense. And I think he actually got him real life too. But I think the thing is, so they just let go of that and then do anything to replace it. And it's just so the best defender on the team last year, you just thought that, everything's going to be all right. But one of the things, in one of the games I always point to highlight how good KCP is, the Celtics game in Denver. When Kristaps Porzingis was having that crazy first quarter in Boston, the first time where he had like 14 points for them, because he's making those open threes when they were like kind of doing a drop and then he was just popping out. What they did in the second game is that they would pre-rotate KCP to cover ground, show hands, and then recover so Jokic can get back in space. They don't have a single player on the roster able to do that consistently anymore.
No.
But that means so much to being able to put KCP, hey, go guard LeBron. KCP, go guard Anthony Davis on the post at time. Hey, KCP, go guard Luka. Go guard Kyrie. Go guard Steph. Christian isn't that kind of defender, and he's not even good enough. He hasn't even been good on Ant this year. Now, I think his best defensive game as of late was against SGA. And SGA was 11 of 22 in the first game that he played against him. And so what I'm saying is, like, they have to solve that. That has to be addressed with immediacy. Otherwise, this will be a repeat next year, because you can't have the lowest defensive floor in the playoff setting and then have the highest offensive ceiling, but you can't even get into the offense because the other players are exhausted or the score is 130 to 126 because you can't get a stop. At that point, you're nullifying the best traits of your best player. And what I'm saying is, Ryan, around the league with Giannis, that's the story. They are not good enough around him for this, and this reason. Around the league, SGA, they might win a ring this year because of that. But if you look at even just like Luka and how they fortify him last year with the Mavericks, with the Neil Gafford, with Derek Lively, with PJ Washington, and now Najee Marshall, in order for him to do what he does best, why is Jokic the one that's not having that done around him? And again, Ryan, they created one of the most efficient 2-point offenses in NBA history this year. They're leading the NBA in layups and in dunks. They're dominating inside the paint. They were averaging 59 points a game in the paint at one point in time this year, Ryan, which is the most ever. But even with that, they were still struggling. So, like, you can't have it both ways. You can't not have modern offense with modern shooters and high three-point volume, and then not have a modern defense with at least two very good to high-level defenders that can make up for a lot of deficiencies on the roster. You can't have both.
Reading the comments has been pretty funny on this, because there's a lot of folks that are upset with us, that we're just kind of writing off this year, that we're writing off this team, think that we're being a little bit too hard on this group when the year isn't even over and the Nuggets still have a chance to win the title.
Have you played? You ain't. Look, if we pulling cards, I done been an athlete my whole life, so I played plenty. I'm telling you based on what I know about what makes basketball work. I mean, I'm just telling you that's just what it is. Like, if you just look around the league, you sit there and tell me, look at the Celtics, look at Cleveland, look at OKC. What do they got that Denver don't got? They got a bunch of athletes. Like, I don't know what to tell you. They have a scheme they're committed to. And if they don't, Cleveland is the worst defense between all of those teams. But guess what Cleveland had? Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. Now what? So now it's like, we at least got the DPOY right here who can anchor.
And so that's the important difference between where the Nuggets are versus where those teams are, is that a lot of the teams that don't have necessarily the best perimeter personnel, they have elite interior rim protection, guys that can deter, like an Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And so, like, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, undersized backcourt that's not necessarily awesome all the time. They can make up for that with the rim protection personnel that they have. Denver can't really do that with Jokic, so they have to do it differently. His skill set is different. He has to be up at the level. So your thought about, like, having somebody that kind of rotates behind him and is big enough to really handle it, it's going to be very interesting to see whether they can make up for that.
Hold on. This is so funny to me. Yeah. So people can't wait for what Tim Legler said. One of his favorite players to watch in the league takes his talents where they're appreciated. I just want people to know
which player is this? Is this Jokic?
Yeah, I just want people to know this. All right. There's been this thing running around this year, and obviously Serbians and me, we've been cool for years now. But it's not even mostly Serbians.
Yeah.
It's this idea that Joker is he's not being appreciated and this and that. I'm like, look, I feel like of anybody to speak on this, let me speak on this. I think Joker's the best in the world. I think he's one of the 10 best players ever. But I also can acknowledge what he's not good at. That dude can't defend when he's tired. He sucks at it. He can't defend a rim when he's tired. He can't move in space when he's tired. Geez, Swipa, why is he tired? Oh, I don't know. Because he doesn't have the personnel around him to make sure he didn't have to overwork every possession. And then on the other end, have the best offensive season of all time. So I got to have the best offensive year ever. And then on the other side of the court, I have things I need you to cover for. Russ, you can't shoot, so what do? We run more stuff to get you near the rim. Michael Porter Jr., you can't dribble. We run DHOs for you or back cuts for you. Jamal Murray, you struggle with bigger guards or whatever. Cool. Pick and roll, DHO, get it. You got the best floor spacer in the league, the best rim roller in the league, the best screen setter in the league. But on the other end, when I need help, now it's like, now it's too much to ask. Ryan, I'm telling you, man, this is what I'm telling y'all. I have been on this boat for forever. Jordan needed Phil Jackson in the triangle, and Scottie Pippen and Ron Harper and Dennis Rodman and Horace Grant. He needed them. He needed shot creators and shot makers and Steve Paxson and Steve Kerr. Tim Duncan needed all those. Manu, Tony. He couldn't self-create.
LeBron needed everybody, man.
LeBron needed a host of players.
Yeah.
That's how you win in the league. Kareem needed Magic. Guess what happened when Kareem won his first title in 71? He had Oscar Robertson, and then he had to trade because he didn't want to be there no more because he thought the organization sucked because they weren't building around him, right? He gets traded to the Lakers. They're losing. He wins the MVP and misses the playoffs in 67. They get Magic, and all of a sudden they're a dynasty. Larry Bird had a host of Hall of Famers around him his whole time. James Worthy was the third option in LA. Freaking Elgin Baylor was the third option to Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain. So Kobe had Shaq, and then Kobe had Powell and a host of athletes, including Lamar Odom and Trevor Ariza and all these other players around him. This is how you win. This is the NBA. What I'm saying is, they, meaning the Nuggets, have done the worst job of any perennial. I'm talking about 3-time MVPs I can think about outside of Moses Malone. They've done the worst job of making sure he has what he needs relative to people in his class. And I've told Ryan this multiple times. This is why I'm so hot about this, Ryan. Yeah. This is why Chris Dunn and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and I'm telling y'all, they got to sign players like this because he can't defend. He can't play defense. So what do you want him to do?
Here's the thing. This is the final thing that I'm going to say before we go. We're not going to get to Nuggets Blazers tonight, folks. It doesn't matter. The game it's game 71 of the season. I couldn't care less about this game tonight. Denver's going to win it or they're going to lose it, and it's going to affect the playoff race in some way. I think that the Nuggets did the right thing in terms of giving their players, giving their main core the benefit of the doubt. And making sure that, like, hey, look, we'll see what happens with this group because they were really close last year and it looked like they were going to win the championship last year. If you just go back to like March of 2024, it looked like they had that capability. And then they gassed out. And I just don't think that the Nuggets learned the lessons that they needed to learn from that moment. And that goes from top to bottom, like everybody. I don't think they learned the lessons of why that happened, other than the fact that they need to not be tired. So they're trying to kind of make up for that because, Joker's been playing 36 minutes a night. Murray's been playing 36 minutes a night. Christian Brown's been playing a whole bunch. Michael Porter's played all but like 3 games. Aaron Gordon is he's fighting, scratching, clawing to get back into the lineup every single night because he's hurt. And I think that the Nuggets screwed up the depth and screwed up that entire aspect of this for cheap reasons, because they didn't want to be above the second apron. And I think that they wanted to fast track the development. But in order to fast track the development, they had to get worse in order to get better. And they haven't gotten better enough. So now you're at the stage where if they fail again this year, it's going to be for similar but also different reasons as to why they failed last year. They will be too tired. They will not be good enough defensively to match up. They won't be athletic enough. They won't be locked in enough, whatever. But it's going, like, there will be changes after this year. And they will have the changes that you're talking about, Swipa. They may not be the right changes, but there will be changes if they fail.
And look, I also said this team can still win the title this year. There is a very real world where they get hot and all of a sudden Jokic plays 71 game. Could he rest it down the stretch? Murray plays 70 game. Could he rest it down the stretch? And all of a sudden they're like, you know what? You actually just can't guard me. And Jamal Murray is like, I don't see defense. Hey, I don't see any I'm good. I'm cooking. And they're rotating and they're playing well. Malone's running the perfect schemes and all this other stuff. That can't happen. But I'm saying their margin for error. If 23 was this, right now it's like
it's paper wide.
Right. So, but they can still do it because they got enough in certain ways in certain matchups. Now, again, if they play like Memphis in the first round, the Rockets in the next round, and then they play OKC, you know what? Great. That sounds like a pretty fair run. And then they play versus Boston, who I think they're not afraid of at all. You know what? It's all on the path. It's all on the path. But I think we got to be honest about what this is as well. It's like if they were better prepared for this moment, the team would be better. Anyway, y'all, that's what we're going to do it for Locked On Nuggets. This is a nice, fun, spicy episode. I'm glad that we did. The 228 people here watching live, thousands of you watching after. I just want to let y'all know we appreciate you. Y'all are the reason why we do this. This is the best Locked On community of the Locked On Network. Y'all know what time it is. This is Swipa. That's Ryan. Matt says hello. Y'all know what it is. See you on the other side.